Welcome to the Six Again Get to Know series, where we chat with NRL personalities from players to coaches to journalists. Let's kick off. So, g'day guys, this is our interview with Moley, or the Mole. You may know if you've read some of his articles online over the past 40 years, also back in Rugby League week. He's been in the rugby league industry, like I said, for 40 years, working for the Daily Telegraph, Channel 9. His name's synonymous with the Rugby League Week magazine when it was running, and recently he's signed on as a writer on rugbyleaguehub.com as one of their Patreon writers. So I'd like to welcome in Moley. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Adam. We got no footy, but there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully May 28 we'll actually have some footy to talk about.
It was pretty positive how Wayne Pearce spoke this afternoon. Looking at 28th of May, 4th of May for training, and I did see in one of your stories that there may have been whispers of a certain coach and certain players training a bit earlier, but that I think you're leaving that to the eye test the first couple of rounds, see if we can pick what team that is. I won't push you for that one.
Yes, there's strong rumours, and funny enough, I wrote that a couple of days ago, and in the last 48 hours I've been told of two other teams that are we're not talking 30 players on a field. We're talking about groups of 7, 8 players running around the bush somewhere, just basically getting themselves fit, because I know myself, and you probably know, you train by yourself. You never push yourself as hard as you would in a group situation, someone yelling and screaming at you. So
exactly,
that's basically what's going on, and knowing the rugby league world, it's not hard to believe.
No, it's and when I was actually reading, I saw one team. The first thing I thought was, it's not going to be the only team. It'll be a couple of others. So I just wanted to start kind of with, you're I'm going to say mysterious figure, I guess, with regards to your stories under the Moley heading and that sort of stuff. But you're very well respected in the journalism and the rugby league industry. So I've got a couple of questions based around that. I've seen the words impeccable sources with regards to where you get information from. And
let me just take my jacket
off.
All right. It's getting warm. It's still nice and warm in Sydney.
Oh yeah, it was 30 plus up here today. So no, I know that feeling. Where does a source begin? Like, how does one go about I'd say sourcing a source to get information from that's going to be reliable and truthful and factual, if you don't have, say, a large media backing behind you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, basically, Adam, you just it's a hard slog. Like particularly in the current climate, there's a real air of mistrust between the journalists and the players, and you can sense that just if you look at social media, you'll see that a lot of players don't have a high opinion of journos. So you've really got to build those bridges, sort of earn a player's trust. And see, back in the old days, and as you said, it's embarrassing to admit, but I've been doing this for 40 years, and I started about 1980 when I was 19, 20 years old, and the world was very different then. We had no social media. Players had real jobs. They didn't have managers. There was no such thing as media managers at clubs. These days the media managers, their job seems to be, in a lot of cases, stopping players and journos talking to each other, which can be very frustrating. And so you basically have to work on that to get a player's trust, and that takes time. But at my age, I'm sort of more in tune with coaches, officials, trainers. You get to know these people over the years. Like you mentioned Wayne Pearce before. Like I covered some of Wayne's first games when he's 18 years old.
Wow.
We go back a long way. I can ring him up, have a chat with him, and if he says something's off the record, he knows we go back far enough that it'll say off the record. And now I'm writing about his son, which really makes me feel old.
You brought up an interesting point in there with regards to when you started. You were ages 19, 20. How'd you go about approaching teams or players? And you said with the absence of media managers and they had regular jobs then, but they were still, I'd say, elite figures or well-known figures. How does a bloke who's 19, 20 without the advantage of nowadays social media contacting? Did you just walk into a change room? Were you hired by a company then? How did that sort of approach come about?
Yeah, it was a long, slow process. My first gig was writing for a paper called the Wentworth Courier, which is actually still going. It's a local paper in the eastern suburbs. I was a mad Roosters fan as a kid, and I noticed that start of one season, probably 79, 78, they didn't have their weekly, report on the Roosters, and I found out later the guy who did it died. So that was his poor luck and my good luck. And I think I rang the Wentworth Courier. They got me in there and they said, "You're very young, but we'll give you a go." And they paid me $5 a column and gave me a press pass. And I still remember this little blue press pass, the feeling when they put it in my hand.
That would have been exciting.
I thought, wow. Yeah, and they probably thought, we're screwing this kid, paying him $5 a column. But what they didn't know, I would have paid them $5 a column.
Yeah, exactly, the opportunity
to get a start. And from there, I went to Rugby League Week, and I was very fortunate then because Rugby League Week was the Bible.
Yeah.
And you walk up to a player or you ring a player and you say, "I'm from Rugby League Week." Back then they'd give you the time of day. Later on it became harder as there were more and more journalists. But see, back then, in a press box, you'd have maybe 5, 6 blokes at a first grade game. You'd have one from the Herald, one from the Sun, which has since died, one from the Telegraph, one from the Mirror, which has since died, and one from Rugby League Week. And that was the press corps, yeah. So, now you walk into a press box, there's 20 people in there, half of them you wouldn't know who they are.
Yeah.
They're working for digital media, working for all sorts of different websites. And it's probably, in fairness to the players, it's probably pretty hard for them because, all these guys want to talk to the players and, it's very hard that they all want the Jonathan Thurstons, the Andrew Johnses, whoever the star is at the moment. And he can't do 20 individual interviews.
Exactly.
So they end up doing these all-in interviews, which are great for Fox Sports News and things like that. But for Rugby League Week, which would come out 4 days later, they're absolutely useless. So I would have to find something different. I just wouldn't even go into the all-in press conferences that you see on TV these days. And you look at them, they're very sterile, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
How do you think you'll go on the weekend? And what went wrong last weekend? And the players just give cliched answers. And they're trained to do that.
I was going to say, does that come down to their media training? Give enough away without giving too much away.
Exactly, and coaches are terrified. Like the last thing they want is a player giving the opposition ammunition, saying, "Oh, Souths are soft. We'll come out and we'll smash them." No one will ever say that, even though they might believe it. They get pulled in the line very quickly and told you say that this is going to be a very hard game, even if we're playing the team on the bottom of the ladder. So.
And that's all about being a robot compared to being a character. And as soon as we get someone who's a character, a player or coach, the mainstream media jump all over it. So it's like, what do you want? Cliched answers or something original? And
fans
want something original.
Yeah, and when we were talking off air before, you mentioned Jamie Soward and
Tony
James
Moley Adams.
Maloney, and they're two very refreshing exceptions to the rule. You know, they were always go-to guys who weren't afraid to say something. But sadly, they're becoming fewer and fewer. You know, we had so many characters back in the good old days. The Mark Guys of the world.
Oh, that would have been fantastic.
You know, Ricky Stewart was great. He always spoke his mind. You know, I could just list off dozens more. But, you know, these days, those players are, you know, it's encouraged out of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's to the detriment of the game, because you just don't get those great stories, those funny stories that you get in other sports and that we used to get in days gone by.
You mentioned a couple of things in there with regards to the mainstream media answers, and I'll come back to that just later on. It's just a refresher for myself. You're still seeing, even with all the new age journalism, etc., going for the mainstream storylines, you're still seen as a respected newsbreaker. And when something you put out there, when you put something out or a story comes out with your name on it, it's not done so for clickbait or for maybe a headline, but it's based around more fact rather than opinion. So 2 days later, if that story comes out, more often than not, it's actually true. Whereas your Fox and your mainstream, they've got this big heading for something that's maybe 2 or 3 weeks down the track. How do you still go around delivering a story and keeping it, maybe, say, secret from a mainstream media source? So, yeah, just along those sort of lines, because you're still doing it, even though times have changed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a competitive industry. You know, there's basically probably, you know, I wouldn't even know how many journalists, hazarding a guess, I'm talking about in print, digital, TV. There'd probably be 50, 60 journalists in rugby league in, you know, New South Wales and Queensland, basically all after
least
the one big story. So, yeah, so it's tough. And that's where this thing you were mentioning before about sources, you go to people, you know, sort of outside the box a little bit. You know, sometimes your best sources are trainers, club doctors, the doorman. You know, yeah, there's all sorts of guys who know what's going on and are happy to have a chat and share it to you. But of course, on the condition of anonymity. And if you look at a lot of my stories, it'll say a source at the Rooster said. You know, I've got to do it that way because guys like Nick Politis, if they find out who my source is, they'll sack them. So it can get pretty heavy, and you know, clubs are often, you know, trying to find out who my sources are, and it's not just me, other journos as well, because they want to keep all their news in house, and you know, they don't want any leaks. But you know, that's the beauty of rugby league. There's always leaks.
There's always something going on.
Yeah.
All right. So let's shift to say a darker side of, well, it could be, I don't know, I'm asking the question. With this competition, have you ever been, you're onto a story, it's an exclusive story. Has a story ever been poached off you by a better offer, by, say, a mainstream, or has there been a mainstream media or someone in a higher position tried to buy a story off you before it goes to air? Has that ever occurred?
You do lose stories all the time. Like you know, I'll get, someone will tell me something, like, you know, they might say, you know, Andrew Johns is making a comeback. I'll think, geez, that's a great story, but you know, you got to weigh it up. You think, you know, is it realistic? Could it happen? And then you got to start making phone calls, and as soon as you start making phone calls, it sets off alarm bells, and you're also eating up precious time. And so you've really got to weigh up, do I just go bang, put the story out there? Is my source trusted enough that I can just go with it? Or am I going to look like a complete fool when it doesn't come true. So timing is the main problem when you lose stories. You know, I've had an example like that happen. I'm chasing it, and then 10 minutes later, I'll look on Twitter and there's Fox Sports News, Andrew Johns to make a comeback. You know, so it's a juggling act. There have been times, it happened recently, and I won't mention the guy because he's a mate of mine, but I asked someone who'd been through some off-field drama, shall we say, would you talk to me? And he said, oh, sorry, I'm not talking. And we're old mates, so I didn't pressure him. And next thing, I saw him on television. And, you know, so I said, I'd sent him a message. I couldn't resist. I said, I thought you weren't talking. And he said, oh, I decided to talk to TV. And, you know, we both know why he would have spoken to TV. They would have made it worth his while, shall we say.
It's a shame because on one side, over the time, you've built the rapport with these sources, you're respected, and I'm sure there's sources that you have that as soon as they've told you something, you're confident enough you can go with it, which gives you the advantage over, say, the new age reporters who don't have that. But yeah, at the other side, they've got the cash flow and all that sort of stuff where they can make the stories worthwhile. So the fact that you're still as relevant as you are in the game today is a credit to you and the work that you do. With regards to what's going on at the moment, we had Todd Greenberg stepping down on Monday. There was meant to be a big meeting on Tuesday with the commission with regards to the TV rights. So Jared and I talked on the last episode about Park Lane out of the US and Opal Sports Advisory out of the UK. Putting up money and then even interest in buying stakes in the game. How do you see maybe private ownership or by overseas sports firms of some of our teams maybe in the future?
Yeah, look, I think Rugby League has a great opportunity at the moment. If we do get up and running at the end of May, and we're one of the few sports in the world being played, you know, I can see you know, the league's global vision that we've been talking about since the days of Super League actually being some sort of chance. You know, the ESPNs and the like may be showing it because, you know, they're obviously starved for sport in the US.
Oh, yeah. They're a lot further off than we are.
Yeah, and that's it. Things with the virus are so much worse over there that, you know, they probably won't be able to get up and running. So if Rugby League's smart, and that's the key word, if. You know, it'd be great if they could do a deal with some of these overseas companies because, you know, sport is such a rare commodity at the moment. Like I like having a punt, and I'm betting on the Belarusian soccer league just because it's about the only thing that's going. And the really sad thing is I'm getting better results on that than I do on Rugby League or the English Premier League. So, you know, I do a little bit of homework, but yeah, it's a sad indictment on my betting skills. Does it just come down to whatever team you can pronounce? No, I put a little bit of science into it. I look up the ladder, the premiership table of where the teams are, and it also shows their last 5 games. And I also have a rule never to go against the home team in soccer because for some reason home ground advantage is much greater in soccer than most sports. You know, that seem to have a much more positive mindset at home, whereas the away team are usually happy to just go away with a draw. This completely separate to anything. It's just something you just said then. I had a lucky opportunity at the end of last year to, as part of professional development, go down to the Broncos and their training setup, and we're taking a session through their head trainer, and their training field's actually designed and angled exactly the same as Suncorp. So when they kick a ball at the training field, the roll that they get there will be exactly the same as it does in Suncorp, all the way down to the angle and the slope of the grass with regards to home field advantage. So I just thought, man, that's intense going to that sort of level of like a training ground. So yeah, I must admit I didn't know that. It was something they just threw out there. I was just, whoa. Yeah, it's interesting, and it would definitely give you an edge if you know how much weight to put on a kick and, you know, that sort of thing, because, you know, inches mean everything in rugby league,
yeah,
don't they?
huge.
Particularly when it comes to those kicks into the dead ball area. So, yeah, very interesting.
So I've only got a couple more. Best, worst player, agent, coach, NRL person. It's up to you that you've interviewed or gained access to. So maybe the hardest person you've ever had to gain access to because you really wanted a story, or just the best person to interview that you've always just had a good time and gotten a good story at the same time.
Oh, gee, it's hard. Looking back over 40 years, probably the guy I've had the most fun with, and you'd know him as a lovable larrikin, is Mark Geyer. He's a great fella. I'd probably put Wendell Saylor in there with him. MG, I used to ghost his column in Rugby League Week, so we had a special relationship. Wendell, you remember when he had his little cocaine problem? He lived not far from me, and no one would let him play. He wasn't allowed to play league. He wasn't allowed to play union, so I got him to come down and play touch footy with us. We don't drug test our touch footy field, and him and young Tristan, who was about 12 then, came along and played with us one season. And
why not?
Yeah, and it's been great to see Tristan become a first grader. He was up to about my chest then. I'm not very tall, but he's Wendell really pushed him at touch, and we could see then, you know, even at 12, the kid had great footwork, great skills. I didn't know if he was going to become a first grader, but you know, he came into his own last season, and he's just one of many players I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully on May 28th.
Well, I think you've just answered my next question. Are there any present or upcoming NRL players or coaches or even journalists to keep an eye on in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret, but the guy I rate probably higher than I rate anyone as far as up and comers is Kalen Ponga. You know, the things he's already achieved. Just amazing. In a Newcastle team that was really struggling a couple of years ago, you know, he came in as a teenager and just absolutely blitzed them, and he's just getting better and better. And, you know, I think in 20 years' time, we'll be talking about him the way we talk about the Wally Lewises, the Andrew Johnses. You know,
wow,
I think he's
think
he's going to be that good a player. And I give him big raps on social media, and a lot of people bag him. So, you know, maybe he hasn't quite proved himself. Maybe I'm seeing something that's not there, but I just see, you know, he's got just such amazing vision, so much speed. You know, for a little guy, he's strong, he's tough. You know, he seems to have it all, and he's still a baby in terms of experience. So, you know, if there's one player who I think is destined for superstardom, he'd be the one.
It's interesting then, something you highlighted is something that I hold in the highest esteem when I'm judging players is, you said it is vision, and I link that to ability to read the game. And I think as a game, we still don't value decision-making and rugby league IQ kind of as high as we could. And we talk about it when we talk about Thurston and Johns, etc. But I feel as though Thurston gets more raps for his toughness and his grit and his determination, which were part of made him so good. But his decision-making under pressure and Cronk and Johns is really what sets him apart from the rest. And if you're seeing that in Ponga, that's something you can't coach an athlete. If they've got the IQ, they've got the IQ.
Yeah.
So my boy's
and
just going
sadly,
to bed. Okay. I need my charger actually, because the laptop's about to die, and then I'll put him to bed. We've only got a couple of minutes. Sorry about that. He's 3. So you go on.
Stuff. Yeah. Sadly, I think that it's actually coached out of a lot of players too.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned the term robots when it comes to media. Well, a lot of these guys become robots when they get on the field. They're just told, hit it up, get a quick play the ball, and that's it. And And I know firsthand, I love my touch footy, and even at 60, I'm still running around the field. But over the years, I've played with guys who are first graders who you'd think are one-dimensional players, can just hit the ball up, can't pass the ball. But you get them on a touch football field, and let me just...
Hey, the media man himself.
And, yeah, you get them on a touch football field, Jesus. And all of a sudden, these guys... All right, that's the end of it. Yeah, you get these guys who are supposedly, just hit up merchants on a touch football field, and they're throwing these long cutout passes. They're making breaks, and I'm thinking, geez, these guys can actually, really play. They're not just tough blokes who make 30 tackles. But and I say to them, why don't you do that on the field? And they just shake their head and say, because I'm not allowed to. So yeah, it's a game of wearing your opposition down, of limiting errors, and sadly that's one of the problems we have. I mean, to me, it's the greatest game in the world, but it could be better if
it could be way better
if we just took a little of the stereotyping out of it. If it wasn't just 6 hit-ups and a kick and try getting a repeat set. Now, how we do that, I don't know, but definitely the fatigue factor where you have less interchange, and more players are playing more minutes, so they get tired. The little blokes start making more breaks. I think that's one thing we've got to look at, and obviously the NRL are looking at it because they've been doing it over the last couple of years.
We were lucky enough when I was playing footy still, we'd do a whole team trip down to the grand final. We did it for 4 years in a row, and we were there for when the Ipswich Jets got to the grand final, won the Queensland Cup versus the New South Wales Cup. And that's when the Walker brothers were coaching them, doing the short kickoffs to start the game, and the winger passing the fullback, going sideways. And there was people sitting around us going, what the hell are they doing? Because they'd never seen them play before. And I remember they were only up 8-0 or something at half time, but Newcastle they were versing, or Newtown, I can't remember. They were wrecked at half time because they were chasing the ball all over the field like this. And they came off just scratching their heads going, what the hell's this team doing? And then the Jets just ran over them in the second half because they were burnt. But man, it was good to watch. It was so good to watch. You had no idea what was going to come next. It was the 5th tackle every tackle. It was fantastic. Just to finish off, have you heard or seen the online journalism network called The Athletic in the US or the UK?
No, I haven't. I've got to admit, I'm basically that busy, servicing my 150,000 Twitter followers, my Facebook followers. I just don't have the time to look at that. But if you send me the links, I'll certainly check them out.
I would just say it's I think we come from the same ilk with regards to what you put out, those sort of stories, the in-depth stories and getting to know players, and it's kind of taken off the last 2 years over there, and I'm hoping it comes to Australia eventually, and I think you'd be a great candidate to be one of the journalists for them, because they do a lot of things that are very similar to your style, and they're taking on the big guys, and they're getting quite a good following. I just want to say thank you very much. It's been a enlightening interview. I've been quite looking forward to this, and I just want you to, I don't know how to say it, keep fighting the good fight, I guess, and try keep giving us the stories that are actually interesting and more than just a headline. And I think it's probably the longest that a Manly and a Parramatta fan have talked without saying anything about each other's teams in quite a long time.
I'm not really a Para fan, I've got to say.
Damn it, I was just going off the Sharks. One of my questions was, who's your actual team?
They just sent me a T-shirt. Actually, these days I don't have a team. I was great mates with Tim Sheen, so when he was coaching Canberra, I was a Raiders fan. Then when he was at the Tigers, I was a Tigers fan. And that night in 2005, when they won the grand final, he let me sit on the bench. It was probably one of the highlights of my life.
Yeah.
I don't think any journalist's ever done that in the history of the game, sat on the bench in a grand final, and that was as good as it gets. But then they sacked him, so I'm not real big on the Tigers anymore. So I can honestly say these days I don't have a team. I just go for whoever I'm punting on.
And just watch players, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been a pleasure, Adam, and good luck for you guys in the future. And anything I can do to help, just to reach out.
Thank you very much. I feel like a conversation like this needs to finish on a handshake. So thank you very much. And,
Oh,
yeah, sorry, Corona. Very good. Thanks again, mate. We'll finish it there, and good luck. Can't wait to read your next story. And to put a shout out, guys, check out rugbyleaguehub.com. The Moley is writing on their Patreon exclusive stories, but you can also see his stuff at Today's Tale as well on his Twitter feed. It's 9
Yep,
at
follow
Moley.
me. It's at 9_Moley. The more followers, the better.
That's it. Thanks, mate.
All righty. Been a pleasure.